This lesson is to how to create a waist tie in Adobe Illustrator. And it's also a continuation of a part 2 of a lesson that how to create a short romper in Illustrator. So for my students that are working on the romper assignment, this is what the finished look's going to look like, but we're going to start with making the tie. So we left off here where we had the romper detail with the buttons and the cuff. We didn't have any of the details at the waist. So in order to do the waist tie, you're going to first do what looks like here, and I broke it down into parts. You're going to have a stroke outline. So let's open up Windows Stroke. Let's have that available throughout this assignment. Windows Stroke. So if I click on any one of these lines, you can see a blue stroke line and points right through the center. What's going to happen, you're going to draw those randomly with a 5-point stroke weight, and then we're going to turn them into what's called shapes. So anything that's outlined with a stroke line and points, and there's a interior detail that you can fill with color, that's actually now a shape. It's no longer a stroke. This is a stroke when it's running through the center. So we're going to draw our lines, and we're going to use the pencil tool because this is a very organic look. So you're going to take the pencil tool, and we're going to start off with a 5-point stroke weight, so make sure your Windows stroke box is fully extended, your options are showing, you got all this available to you. Take the pencil tool, and if you don't know where pencil tool is, hold down the shaper tool until the pencil tool is right underneath tool number 2. And make sure you got a no fill color in your fill box and only a black stroke color in your stroke box. Take the pencil tool and just draw some random. And maybe don't make them super wiggly, but a little bit of wiggle. Don't make them looking like this. That's not an accurate look to what this fabric tie is going to look like. So just so I can show you what we're doing in real life, is here's our romper with the waist tie. You can see the waist is cinched in. We're drawing these bows, these long strips, which is just what I just started drawing, these long strips. And we'll draw some fabric motion lines to show the way the fabric's going to react when this waist detail of the tie is going to cinch it in. So back to what we're drawing. So I drew my long pieces of strips here, fabric strips, and then what I'm going to do is draw 2 loops. So let me just move these over. And I'm going to use a pencil tool again to do that. So I'm just going to draw some random loops, and roughly maybe about the same size, and if any of them are too big, you can always take the black arrow and scale them a little bit. I got 2 loops, and then I'm going to draw these little shapes here that you see here. They almost look like little elbow macaroni, but that's actually what's going to end up being what you see over here is this knot detail. So we're going to draw those, and those are actually, we're going to draw those with a 3-point stroke. Oh, make sure you're not selected on anything. We're going to draw those with a 3-point stroke weight, a little bit less thick. So I'm just drawing random little curved shapes that look like that, right? And that's our little collection of strokes that we're going to do. Once you have those together and drawn, you like the way they look, and if you don't like the way they look, remember you got the white arrow, and because they're made up of points and curve handles, you can always manipulate them a little further if you want to using the white arrow. But once you like the way they look, you're going to select them all with the black arrow and to go to Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. So Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. And if you notice, let me just undo, Command Z to undo, just to show you up close what's going to happen. So remember, we have a blue stroke line running through the center of all these details we just drew. And we're going to go to, watch what happens when I go to Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. Now that blue stroke line is now, and all the points are now on the exterior of the shape, because now it's no longer a stroke line. That's a stroke line. Now it's a shape. So it's a shape that you can fill the interior parts in with color. So that's our goal, to turn these stroke lines into shapes. So now once I have that, for instance, if you wanted to change the interior color from black to another color, you can change it through here. But first we're going to do this little toggle arrow, which is called the swap fill and stroke here. And all it does is just swap places between the fill color and stroke color. So I'm just going to click on that, and look what happened. Once I move the black into the stroke box, now I have a black stroke outline around my shapes with a no fill and tide. So if you ever wanted to fill in your fabric tie, you could pick a color from the color picker window. And now, because it's a shape, you can see that you can fill the interior with the color and the exterior will be a stroke color. So that's the great thing about outlining strokes. You can turn them into shapes. So back to what we have. Let me just delete this. I'll move this for a second. I have all my shapes are now strokes. And all I want to do now, I'm going to delete that so I can show you. You have your page. I'm making a copy. You guys just work off the original one you have. I'm making a copy so I can keep my original one intact. Now you're going to just bring them together. So once you turn it, you're going to bring the pieces and the bows together. So we're going to do that to look like this, what you have here on the side. I'm going to take the black arrow and select one side of the long strip of fabric and pull it together, and I'm going to make it more centralized right here, where everything's going to be centralized into where it's being knotted right here. So I'm going to pull the bow over and maybe start it at the top and make sure it's centralized. And I might even rotate it because I want to kind of make sure the bow is kind of protruding out left and right of that central location where the knot will be. So I'm going to, in order to rotate them, take the black arrow, and the black arrow has a scaling and rotation function as well as selecting shapes. So if you hover over the black arrow, these little white, what looks like points, they're not. They're actually scaling boxes. They're also directions for how to rotate something. So if you hover over one of those, what looks like a point, but it's actually, I call it a scaling box, it's got a double-sided bendy arrow like that. So once you do, you can click and hold that down and you can see that it's rotating the shape. So I'm just doing a subtle rotation as I'm bringing it together. So this one I don't think I need to rotate. I just wanted to rotate that bow out so it's a little bit towards the left. And again, we're joining everything so it's centralized at the top. Now I got my little macaroni shapes, which is actually what's going to form my knot. I'm going to take that one with the black arrow, bring it over, and I'm actually going to rotate it till it's kind of on top like that. I'm going to take the other one, bring that over, and I'm going to rotate that one until it looks like something like that. So they kind of almost look like they're a circle shape of each other. And what I'm going to do to make this look like the ties being like knotted through the knot, this is the knot, I'm going to click on this long fabric strip that I have here with the black arrow. I'm going to object arrange, bring to front. Bring that one to front, and then I'm going to bring this little elbow macaroni that's actually part of our knot. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to do object arrange, bring to front on just those two pieces. And now you can start to see that it looks like a little bit like things are being looped through and knotted. So once you have those brought together, you are going to change your stroke weight. Move this down so you can see my little instructions. Change your stroke weight to 0.5. So I want this to be a little bit thinner. So this is where we were before, and then this is where we're going to end up. So change that to 0.5, and let me get rid of this part so I can show you how we're going to manipulate it further. So then we're going to use the white arrow to manipulate points and make the tie appear more drapey. So you can see the difference between what we have here. That was a stroke that we turned into a shape. And you can see it's a little bit more organically tied here. The shape is a little bit, it's less rounded at the bottom. It's got a little bit more of an organic shape in the bow. It's a little bit more drapey looking because it's fabric. It's kind of reacting the way it's going to react when gravity hits it, when it gets pulled and tugged by the knot. So this is a little bit too perfect. These rounded shapes don't look natural to what the bottom of a fabric tie would look like. So what I'm going to do to create that more natural look is I'm now going to use the white arrow. So I'm going to click on the white arrow, and remember this shape now has a bunch of points and it also has curve handles. First thing I'm going to do is manipulate these bottoms to make them look less round. So I'm going to take one of the white points and I'm just going to widen this area, and then these little points in the middle I might bring up to kind of flatten out that like very obvious rounded shape. And then I'm going to take these 2 points here and I'm going to pull them out to make it a little wider because it's super narrow right here. I'm going to take the white arrow and to select 2 points at the time, you click on one, hold shift, click on the other, and now I got 2 of these white filled points now blue selected, and I can pull them both out at the same time, which is great. So then I don't have to do them individually. So now I'm going to pull this one. You can even pull at curve handles if you want to straighten out some areas. So just start to play with playing with the way that this tie is going to look. I might even flatten out a little bit more of the bottom here. You can even play with the interior of the bow, narrow and wide in some places, and you just want to make it look as organic as possible. This is another area I want to point to. Right here, I actually pulled that up to make it look like it's coming out of the knot. So let's do that for sure. Use the white arrow on that manipulation as well. I'm just using a white arrow for this whole part of the lesson. So even on this side of the bow, I might like play with this a little bit, making it look less perfect. We're just really trying to make it look more drapey and natural and just less like that stroke shape that we started off with. Just a little bit more organic looking. And you can, if it helps, you can look at the way pictures on the internet of the way that fabric ties look. And again, let's finish off this edge as well, like we did over here, to kind of straighten it out, make it a little wider. You know, just play with that. So until we start to get a look that we think just looks a little bit more drapey. And even these points you can't see because they're being hidden underneath the other tie. You can manipulate those as well. So basically get that kind of shape, just looking a little less like perfect and a little bit more organic. So once you have that done with your white arrow, the next thing you're going to do is add these little fabric motion lines into it to make it look like the tie is a little bit more twisted. And I'm just going to bring him over closer so you can see how I do that. And that's just going to give it just more of a look of, again, that the way fabric drapes when it's being tied into a knot. It's kind of going to twist in some areas. We're going to add a little single needle top stitching to finish off the hems of the fabric tie. So let's open up our window stroke box for that. And for these fabric motion lines, I'm going to use a 0.25 stroke weight. I'm going to use the pencil tool again, but we're doing loose pieces, so you want to make sure there's no fill color in your fill box, only stroke color. So all these fabric motion lines are loose pieces. So I have a couple fabric motion lines kind of coming out of the knot. Let's start here. This one I drew kind of to make the knot look like it's twisted on itself, and I drew another one here. So let's just draw that first. And that's just, and actually, I'm sorry, those lines are going to be 0.5 stroke weight. And again, if you didn't draw it so great, you can always manipulate with the white arrow. But basically, it's like from here in to out. Makes it look a little bit more twisted. I'm going to draw this line right here at the 0.5 stroke weight as well. So that kind of makes the tie look like it's twisted on itself, or maybe the back side of the tie is showing through. So now these fabric motion lines, I'm going to switch back to a 0.25. And I'm going to just draw a couple random ones coming out of the tie. And some can be long. Just make sure you stay in the confines of the CAD. So like these parts that's sticking out, you don't want that. You want to make sure that you bring that in because nothing should stick out outside of the CAD shape. And maybe I'll put that there. Okay. So just a couple organic like kind of fabric motion lines, maybe one here. Just kind of indicate movement. Now we're going to draw some stitching. So remember, use your pen tool for stitching. Click on dash line. We want a 2-point dash with a 1-point gap. Don't worry about the zeros. I don't know why it's adding that. It's just 2 points and 1 point. And then we're going to draw stitching here on the bottom of the hem. Release. Another stitch line here on the bottom of the hem. As long as dash line is checked and your stroke weight is 0.25, you got your dash and gap numbers, you should have a little broken stitch line. It looks like that. So once you have that done, let me close this for a second, you have your bow and your tie. So the next thing I would do is take the black arrow, hover over that whole bow and tie and do an object group on it. So then you can group it and you can move it around the page and it's all together, it doesn't separate, because remember there's a bunch of loose pieces there. The next thing you're going to want to do now to complete is to draw the waist detail. So this is also the fabric that's the tie and the bow are coming out of. You need that waist detail. It looks something like this. So that I'm going to use to actually draw. I'm going to draw that over top of the actual garment CAD. So let me just, this is from an earlier assignment, so let me just delete this off. Get all this stuff out of here because you're going to do that with me now. So don't do what I'm doing. You don't have this. Okay, so your CAD looks like this for my students that are working on the romper. This is where we left off in part 1's video. Now we're going to draw this part here, this waist detail that goes all the way across. And remember, we drew our CAD to have a little cinched in detail at the sides because we knew that there was going to be a tie here that was going to cinch it in. So now I'm going to use the pencil tool to draw that. And before I do that, actually, take the black arrow, hover over your whole CAD, and do an object lock selection, because anytime you're getting ready to draw something new over top of an existing CAD, lock your CAD, because what happens is you have these beautiful stroke lines and top stitching all in the right place. If you accidentally draw this new detail, you might grab at some point in the waist and mess it up. So let's just focus just on the waist detail and not worry about our beautiful CAD and messing up on any of the vector points that are in that. So lock it, so therefore I can't pull on it. That's important. And now we're going to draw a waist tie. So the way I'm going to draw this waist tie, let's just look at it again off the figure. And I'm going to draw it with a little divot at the top and bottom, because that's the part where the knotted detail is going to cinch in that waist tie. So let's just draw knowing that that's going to be part of the drawing. Take the pencil tool and just start drawing in from that area. You know what, let me do that again. Draw from here, and then draw your little divot there like I just dipped down. Go along the side, draw your divot again, and then come back out full and return back to your drawing. So even if you draw it loose and you don't love the way it looks, let's always use a white arrow to fix it. So just get the general drawing done, and you can always manipulate it later. Now I'm going to go to Windows Stroke, change the stroke line to 0.5. I want it a little thicker here. And now I'm going to just fix a little bit of this, make it look a little bit better. So take the white arrow and you can kind of move different points. And the goal is to have the waist tie extend past the CAD a little bit in this area, but it doesn't need to extend that much. And it's going to be the height of what we drew in our CAD that was kind of cinched in. So I'm just going to pull those a little bit closer. And remember, you have curve handles too, so you can always play with those. I'm going to maybe pull this down and just maybe, I only want that little divot to appear right here. Okay, so I got something that looks good there, I think. And I'm going to click on it, fill the fill box with white. And in order to do that, I'm going to go to Window Color. I like to use Window Color whenever I need a black or a white chip. So put your fill box on top, make sure your waist detail is selected with the black arrow, and then take the white fill box and fill that tie with white. And I'm just going to show you what the before looks like, because remember, you saw the stitching and everything coming through the tie, but once I fill it with white, now it's covered up. So that's what we want. We want that covered up. Now I'm going to draw some fabric motion lines, and you can see that coming through here, and it's just going to indicate where the fabric is kind of twisting and pulling. But before I do that, let's take our bow and our waist tie that we made so beautifully, that we grouped. Remember, it should be grouped, and we're going to bring it over to meet our waist and put it in that area where the cinch happens here, where the knot is cinching in the waist. And you're going to do an object, arrange, bring to front, because you want to make sure that knot is on top. And you can see now it makes sense why we drew that little divot here, because that's where the knot gets knotted. So now let's draw those fabric motion lines. Let's take the pencil tool. Again, no fill color in your fill box. And we're going to just start drawing some random fabric motion lines. Let's go back to Windows Stroke and change our stroke weight to 0.25 for all of our fabric motion lines. Okay. And then really important, draw some lines, fabric motion lines that come out of the knot, because remember, if you tie a knot, you always kind of see the fabric kind of twisting out of the knot. So you definitely want to draw some there. And then sometimes I just draw one kind of coming off the top, or one coming off the bottom, maybe one coming off the side. I don't love that one, so we'll get rid of that. But just, you get the gist of it, just to get an idea of like where you're going to draw some of that fabric motion lines. And then what we're going to do is, after you're done that, you're going to, because you locked your body CAD, which is great, You can now hover over the waist and the bow and the tie and do with the black arrow and do an object group, and it won't select your body CAD. It'll just select this. I want to make this all one unit that's grouped together. So now all we need to do is draw how the fabric is reacting. So let's go back to our picture to take a look at that. So what we're getting ready to draw now is the way the fabric is kind of cinched in from the action of the waist tie, and you can see some lines kind of pulling up from the bottom and top of the waist. Same thing on the back view. So that's kind of what we're doing, is just drawing some fabric motion lines to show the way the fabric's reacting once it's being cinched in by this waist tie. So what you're going to do now is you're going to take the pencil tool, and let's go back to our window stroke box again to 0.25 stroke weight, no dash gap hidden there during solid lines. And you're going to draw just some random lines with the pencil tool. And I kind of draw them short and thin. I don't draw them super curvy. Just kind of draw some are a little longer, some are a little shorter. But they're literally coming off the top of the waist and the bottom of the waist. And that's it. Because that's where the fabric's being reacting to it being pulled by the waist tie. So now to select all those fabric motion lines, once I've drawn them, remember if you don't like the way one looks, you can take the white arrow and kind of manipulate it a little bit. But just do a couple short, couple long, in and out, and they're all kind of coming off of the waist tie. So once you have that done, take the black arrow. Actually you can use this new tool called the lasso tool. You can lasso around the fabric motion lines you just picked, and then you can hold shift and lasso around the ones at the bottom that you just drew. And just so you know, sometimes it won't pick all the fabric motion lines at once. You can see there's like 4 down here it didn't pick. It's not highlighted in blue, but in order to fix that, all you have to do is hold shift and just select them all with the white arrow. And now you can see all of them are highlighted in blue. You can do an object group. And now all the vector points are highlighted in blue, and now it's one grouping that you can, that they're all together. So now I want to group them, object group, and then Command C, Command V, copy paste. And then do an object transform, reflect vertical, and let's move those fabric motion lines to the other side of the tie. And even though they might not fit perfectly, because you can see some of these are not even anywhere near the tie, we can fix that, no problem. So let's click on, with the black arrow, the actual knotted tie, the waist tie, and do an object arrange bring to front, because that's going to hide the fabric motion lines that were covering up on top of the tie. And now these ones that are kind of floating in space up here, even though these fabric motion lines are grouped, you can actually still use the white arrow on anything that's grouped and just click and pull them down and have them meet where they're supposed to meet, which is right above the tie. So you can click on any one of these. You can even shorten them if they're too long and do a little manipulation. Because fabric motion lines are very organic, we don't have to worry about a perfect symmetry left to right. We just need to make it look like it's in the proper location, and it looks like the fabric is reacting the way it should when it's being pulled. So there you go. There's our waist tie with the bow and the knot. Our fabric motion lines that are coming off the top and bottom of the CAD being reactionary to being pulled by the waist tie. Remember to object unlock all, because you did lock your body CAD so that you can draw all those waist details. And once you've done that and you think everything looks good, take the black arrow, hover over your whole entire front view, and do an object group. Anytime you're done one view of a CAD, you want to make sure you always object group. Now we're going to do a copy and paste, Command C, Command V. Copy and paste your front view, because you're always going to use your front view to get your back view. We need a back view of this romper as well. So here's the back view of the romper. You can see there's a couple things that don't belong. So you copy the front view to make the back view, but the back view doesn't have buttons. It doesn't have the bow and the tie. So we want to make sure we get rid of those things and delete them off that pasted copy that we just made to make our back view. So this is the back view that I did, so you can reference that as a completed back view. But here's the pasted copy that I did of the front view. And don't forget to keep a copy of your original front view, because you always need your front view as well. You're just going to use a second copy of your front view to make your back view. So once you do have that pasted copy of your front view, you're going to do an object ungroup on that one because you want to delete off some details so it looks like your back view. First thing you're going to delete is not the whole entire tie. You're actually going to move the tie off the body for a second. Now I want to object ungroup the tie because I only want to delete off the bow and the knot. I want to keep this detail because that's going to carry through even though we're going to manipulate it so it doesn't have this little divot. It's still there on the back view. So just delete off the bow and the tie and then go back and object group just that detail right there and bring it back. We'll fix that later to make it look more realistic to what it'll look like on the back view. Other things that don't apply to the back view are this button placket. So let's click on it with the black arrow, hit delete. Click on the stitching that doesn't apply. This loose piece that we drew of the center front placket doesn't apply. And then also just this part of the stitching doesn't apply. So I'm actually going to take the white arrow on that, just delete off that part because I want to keep this part up here. If I hit the black arrow with it, it would delete it off the whole thing. And you might have to maneuver your stitching once you delete off that over here on the V-neck part of the body. But next thing you're going to do is a loose piece. That's just a perfectly straight, solid stroke line right here. This is going to be called our center back seam. And it only appears in the back view. You're going to take the pen tool and make sure you only have a stroke color, no fill. And you're going to click on top of that bottom of that V shape and go all the way down to where the bottom of the butt area would be. And hold shift on the keyboard when you draw this. Make sure your Windows stroke box has a 1-point stroke line for the center back seam. That's what this is because that should be a little bit thicker of a line. Then you're going to copy and paste Command-C, Command-V, that center back line because if you see on my completed back view, I have a stitching there. So what the great thing about once you've done any stitching on your CAD, you can turn any line into the same stitching. So here's my line I drew to be stitching. And now I can take what's the eyedropper tool right here. And as long as that line's selected, I can eyedrop on top of stitching. And what it does, it makes it the same exact dash and gap numbers, same stroke weight, everything makes it everything the same. Copies. The eyedropper tool copies things for you. So now the next step is I'm going to click on with the black arrow my waist tie, and I'm going to do an object arrange bring to front because I don't want the center back seam and the stitching showing through my waist tie. My waist tie is on top. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use the white arrow, and you can see this is my completed back view over here. I'm going to get rid of this divot detail, and I'm just going to flatten it out because the back of the tie doesn't have that knot, so there's no cinching that's happening in that area. So I'm going to take the white arrow, and I'm going to just manipulate the shape of this waist tie and get rid of that area where it got cinched. And then these, if you remember, these little things that were coming out, they were coming out of the knot on the front view. So I'm going to delete those because there's no more knot there. So those fabric motion lines don't make sense to what's happening on the back tie. And instead, I'm going to draw a couple fabric motion lines coming off of the bottom and the top of the tie. So just do that. Make sure your Windows stroke, just as a double check, for fabric motion lines, we're on 0.25, and it's a solid line, so there's no dash line checked. So I'm going to just draw a couple fabric motion lines like that to kind of indicate how the fabric's twisting. And then I also want you to notice that in this area right here is all filled with fabric motion lines. On this one, which was my front view that I pasted and copied to make my back view, that it's empty. So what I want to do now is just draw a couple random fabric motion lines to fill in this gap. So I'm just going to draw just 1 or 2 on the bottom and maybe 1 or 2 on the top. And again, just play with it. It's really organic the way you draw fabric motion lines. So here's my completed back view. Oh, and you know what? Let's do this little detail. I forgot about that. Anytime you have like a little fabric motion in areas where it shifts, like around the crotch area or back where the butt is, I sometimes will draw a pencil tool and just draw a random line like that with a 0.25 stroke weight, and I would have it intersect back there to kind of indicate where the butt line might be. And on your front view, and I forgot to mention that, on your front view, the students that are doing the romper, let's draw one there as well where the crotch would be, just a little one right there, so to finish that CAD off. And once you've completed your front view, once you've completed your back view, you're gonna hover over it with the black arrow and do an object group, just like you do on any completed CAD. So now you got your front and your back view. You're going to copy and paste them and bring them over to the CAD template. And your CAD template will have a description here, CAD number 2, short romper with tie. You got your grouped shapes of your front view and back view copied and pasted over top of the words front view and back view, and name and date. And that's going to be the completed assignment for the short romper with tie.